They sit quietly at both ends of every loaf, yet they're often the most overlooked slices in the entire package. Some people eat them without hesitation, others avoid them completely, and somehow they almost always seem to be the last pieces left behind. It's a small detail that most of us never question, even though we see it every time we open a fresh loaf of bread. So why are bread heels included with bread slices in the first place? Are they simply unavoidable leftovers from baking, or do they actually serve an important purpose? Let's find out right here on History of Simple Things. The end pieces of a loaf are commonly called the heels, although different regions have their own names for them, including the crust, butt, or end slice. Unlike the interior slices, each heel has one side completely exposed during baking, allowing it to develop a thicker crust and a firmer texture. This difference isn't created after the loaf is sliced. It forms naturally as the bread bakes inside its pan or on a baking surface. Heat reaches the exposed ends more directly than the protected center, causing more moisture to escape and producing a darker, slightly drier exterior. While the inside remains soft and airy, the heels become denser and chewier, giving them their distinct appearance and texture that many people immediately recognize. One of the biggest reasons the heels stay attached to the loaf is because they serve as natural protective covers. Once bread has been sliced, every exposed surface begins losing moisture to the surrounding air. The heels reduce that exposure by covering the first and last interior slices, slowing down how quickly they dry out. Although modern plastic bread bags also help retain moisture, the heel slices provide an extra physical barrier that works alongside the packaging. Removing them before sealing the loaf would expose additional soft surfaces, making the bread more susceptible to drying and becoming stale. In other words, those tougher end pieces help preserve the softer slices that most people actually reach for first. Some people assume the heel slices are made from a different recipe or somehow become harder after packaging, but neither is true. Every slice in the loaf comes from the exact same dough mixed in the same batch. The only difference is where each slice sits during baking. Because the ends are directly exposed to the oven's heat, they lose more moisture and develop a thicker crust than the center slices. This creates the impression that they're somehow different, even though their ingredients remain identical. The same principle can be seen in many baked foods, where edges become crispier while the middle stays softer. It's simply the natural result of heat distribution, rather than a deliberate change in the recipe. From a manufacturing standpoint, removing the heels would create unnecessary waste. Commercial bakeries are designed to produce complete loaves that can be baked, cooled, sliced, and packaged efficiently with minimal handling. Automatically discarding the end slices would reduce the amount of bread sold from every loaf while requiring additional sorting and processing. Since the heels are perfectly edible and many customers still enjoy them, there's little incentive for manufacturers to remove them before packaging. Keeping every slice also helps ensure customers receive the full advertised weight of the loaf. Instead of treating the heels as scraps, bakeries simply include them as part of the finished product, allowing each consumer to decide whether to eat them or not. Although heel slices often have a mixed reputation, plenty of people intentionally save them for specific uses. Their firmer structure makes them well suited for toast because they can become crisp without falling apart as easily as softer center slices. They're also commonly used for sandwiches with juicy fillings, homemade breadcrumbs, croutons, bread pudding, stuffing, or French toast, where the denser texture helps absorb flavors while maintaining their shape. In some households, the heels are even considered the best slices because they offer more crust and a slightly richer baked flavor. Personal preference plays a much larger role than quality, proving that the least popular slices for some people are actually the favorites of others. The existence of the heel highlights a simple reality about baking. Bread isn't manufactured slice by slice. Every loaf begins as a single piece of dough that expands, browns, and develops different textures depending on how heat reaches each area. Even with modern ovens that carefully regulate temperature and airflow, the ends will always bake differently from the center because they're directly exposed. Unless bread were artificially trimmed after baking, heel slices are an inevitable part of the finished loaf. Rather than being defects, they demonstrate the natural physics of baking, showing how moisture, heat, and airflow interact to create the variety of textures found within a single loaf of bread. The next time you reach the end of a loaf, those two overlooked slices might seem a little different. They're not leftovers, mistakes, or filler added to complete the package. Instead, they reflect every stage of the bread-making process, from the way dough rises in the oven to how a loaf stays fresh on your kitchen counter. Whether you enjoy eating them or always leave them until last, the heels have already done their job by helping protect the bread between them. Sometimes the parts we pay the least attention to turn out to have been serving an important purpose all along, reminding us that even the simplest, everyday foods often have thoughtful design hidden in plain sight. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.